parliamentary forbearance bill, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman.
Stuart Nash.
Chairman, I would like to speak on part 2 of this bill. We're talking about the undertaking relating to networks developed with Crown funding as part of the UFB ultra-fast broadband initiative. Now, there are many concerns with regard to this bill. My colleague David Cunliffe and Claire Curran and Marion Street have talked about them, but I'm going to narrow it down a little bit. First, I just want to say is that we're talking here, and we're talking about clause 156 AD Part 2 sub AB as well as B3. We're talking about January the 1st, 2020. We're talking about 8.5 years away. Kids in kindy will be in high school when this is rolled out. Labor will be preparing for its election for a 4th term. Stephen Joyce, who will have been leader, will have been rolled by Amy Adams, who then will have been displaced by Aaron Gilmore. And we're talking so far into the future, that it's hard to take this seriously. The government went out. This was one of their major election promises, and we're talking about 2020. We're talking about... I'm going to miss Sandra Gowdy. I'm going to miss Sandra Gowdy when she retires next year, because she said, what's this got to do with the bill? Well, if we look at 156 AD, Mr Joyce, would you like to go and talk to about it? 156 AD, provide for the local fibre company, LFC, to supply unbundled layer 1 service on all parts of its fibre to the premises access network on or after 1st of January 2020. This goes to the heart of the bill, Ms Gowdy. I think you should stay on. Tell Scott Simpson, no, you want it back, because we'd love to have you back. You're great for the Labor Party, so please stay. Please stay. There's something else I'd like to talk about as well. We're talking about 156 AD Part C here, Part C. And it says, and I quote, provide for the LFC, and LFC is, this bill is full of these enactments, and there is a local fibre company to deal with the ultra-fast broadband partner on an arm's length terms. But then it says in brackets, unless the UFB partner and the LFC are not separate entities. Now, I would have thought that provides a bit of a conflict of interest, and I would have thought that there's a real risk that a service provider who could provide itself or individual access seekers with better UFB services and more attractive prices compared to others. There is a slight conflict of interest, I would have thought, if the UFB and the LFC are in fact the same entities, because it provides that they can be the same entities. There's a lot in here that really just, there's not enough information here. Let's talk about Part D on this. And I quote, provide for disclosure of relevant information to the Commission to support the Commission's assessment of compliance. Now, again, what does relevant information mean? It's quite a broad term. It's often used in bills of Parliament. And I normally wouldn't ask about this, but the Minister and the Commerce Commission have been at such loggerheads all the way through this bill, all the way through this whole process, that I'm slightly sceptical that, in fact, the Commerce Commission and the Minister will actually be able to work in a constructive way to deliver on this part in the bill. That's what I have grave concern about, because the Commerce Commission has actually come out and said numerous times that it didn't agree with very much fundamental parts of this bill. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why, once upon a time, the major part of this Part 2 has been withdrawn. And Mr Joyce understands that. He finally listened to reason. I suspect actually Mr Key said to him, Stephen Joyce, you've got to get rid of this. This is so inequitable that it has to go. He probably got a lot of pressure around those cocktail parties with his telco mates, but that's just conjecture, of course. Part 156 AF. Now this, there are so many, this is quite a prescriptive piece of legislation. It's quite a large bill. And we're up to page 108 when we're talking about 156 AF, and it sets out what the Minister must and mustn't do, what everyone has to do, and then it goes, Minister may determine further requirements for undertakings. So after being incredibly prescriptive, it then says, if the Minister wants to add anything else, he can. Why do we have the rest of it if it's up to the Minister's discretion? Why didn't we just got a small bill that's about 5 pages long that say the Minister can do whatever he wants? Because in essence, this bill allows the Minister to do pretty much what he wants. The Minister may determine future requirements with which the undertaking must comply. I mean, I'm keen to know, Mr.
Stuart Nash.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, does the Minister actually have in mind any further requirements and undertakings that he thinks he may want to throw into this? Is this something just in case he hasn't got it down pat? Or is this because there's a cunning plan here? There's a cunning plan to sneak something in under the radar, which wouldn't be the first time with this bill. Again, we come down to 156AG. The Minister may issue and consult on draft determination. But no, what happened when that was there, it was changed to must. It was changed to must. Now, when you look at 156AG on page 108 in the bill itself, it actually still does say may, but I think the drafters have actually picked this up and they have changed may to must. But it just it cuts to the heart of the argument around this bill. There are so many mays. A must, in my view, signifies legislative requirement. Okay? Here we go. Before making a determination under section 156AF, the Minister must prepare a draft determination and consult on that draft. Now, it used to read may. It used to read the Minister may prepare a draft. But someone in their wisdom, no doubt it was Claire Curran or David Cunliffe, who went through this bill like a fine-tooth comb, finally said, hold a second, there's too much discretion for the Minister. And let's be honest about this. By the time this comes in, Stephen Joyce will have come and gone as the Minister. Who knows who the Minister will be? Probably Claire Curran, actually. But there are so many mays, there's so much ambiguity here and so much wideness. You could drive a double-decker bus through it. And then it goes down, must prepare a draft determination and consult on that draft with those persons that the Minister considers have a material interest in the determination. Again, we've got to ask the question here, how will the Minister determine how will the Minister consider those who have a material interest in this? Because for a lot of this bill, the Minister actually did not consult with those who I would have thought, who our team thinks does actually have material considerations. In fact, the Minister totally ignored Commerce Commission advice on this. But it says here that he must consult, but it doesn't say that he must listen. So I suppose what the Minister can do is he can write a letter, he can send it out to whoever and say, well, as part of the conditions of this bill, I've got to send you this letter. If there's anything that you want to talk about, then send it in. We're talking about 156AG. Again, there's... We go to 156AJ, and this is the process for submission and considerations of undertaking. There's a whole lot of may submit undertakings for approval by the Minister. The Minister may approve or decline undertakings. Again, the wording around may or must is quite significant. Now, let's not underestimate this. As mentioned, if it said the Minister must approve or decline undertakings, then he has a legislative requirement to do that. And I'm talking about page 110 here, but it says the Minister may approve or decline undertakings. Again, I would like to ask the Minister, does he in fact see under any conditions or any sort of obligations where in fact he may have to approve or decline undertakings? Or is this just throwing in like an open-ended piece of legislation to do whatever he wants to do when anything arises? Again, we come down, and I'm jumping all over the place here, Mr. Chair, but we're on 156AD2A. We're talking about here resolution. An undertaking may specify a mechanism for resolution. Now, I would have thought, at least when it comes to conflict resolution, the Act would say an undertaking must specify a mechanism for a resolution. It goes on by suitably qualified and experienced independent person of any disputes that arise between the local fibre company, the LFC, and access seekers after the undertaking is approved. Now, why wouldn't the House want to specify that if there is a dispute between a local fibre company and an access seeker, that a disputes resolution must be set up? In here it just says may, which just leaves it completely open. Dr. Wayne Mapp must have a look at this legislation. As someone who's got a PhD in law, he must look at this legislation and go, goodness me, thank God that's not my bill, because I wouldn't have drafted something as open-ended and ambiguous as this. But don't worry, Dr. Mapp. No, well, maybe that's why he's leaving. Maybe you did draft this bill. I'm not too sure. But I'll tell you what, it really is a bit of a dog's breakfast. And we're not just talking about any piece of legislation here. What we are talking about here is a legislation that is going to split up the state monopoly. I would have liked to have seen this legislation be a lot tighter and require the minister, legislative intent to require the minister to set up these sorts of things.
Honourable David Cunliffe.